Excessive force by police officers is sometimes very hard to determine, and sometimes it's very, very simple. The officer is allowed to use reasonable force to effectuate an arrest. So the question becomes, what is reasonable? What's reasonable to you and reasonable to me may be different. So we have to look at what is reasonable to an average citizen or an average officer. And the fact of the matter is, if you are not resisting, if you're not struggling, almost any force beyond simply putting your hands behind your back is unreasonable. It is not common for police to use pain compliance control holds. That's where they'll grab your wrist and twist it very hard to put your hand behind your back, or officers will sweep your feet out from underneath you to knock you to the ground. If you're not actively struggling, that is excess force. Excess force also occurs where officers choose to tase you when you haven't done anything. There are cases where people have said, "I don't want to get out of my car," and have been tased numerous times. There are numerous cases where people have been relatively compliant, but not completely compliant. That means the officer has said, "Stand there, put your hands up," and the person has stood there and been asking questions and moving their hands around, not up, but just around, where they've been tased or where they've been sprayed with a chemical compound. That's excess force. There was no reason to do so. The use of firearms or deadly force is a much more complicated issue. But basically, to use deadly force, the officer has to be in imminent danger of grievous bodily harm, or someone else has to be in imminent danger of grievous bodily harm. What that means is that having a gun on the table behind you while you're facing the officers doesn't give the officer the right to shoot you if your hands are up, if your hands are down, or if your hands are crossed. The officer would only have the right to use deadly force if you lunged for the gun. You have to be careful with deadly force. Some of the courts have said that if an officer sees a bulge in your shirt and a citizen has just reported that you have a gun under your shirt, and the officer has you kneel down or put your hands behind your back, and you make a movement towards that bulge, some courts have said even if that bulge turns out to be a Walkman or a phone, the officer, based on the information they got that you had a weapon and your sudden move and the bulge, is sufficient to justify deadly force. It's very fact specific. So when you get into issues with police officers, videotapes are extremely important. Independent witnesses are extremely important. Photographs of your injuries are extremely important. A documentation in the hospital of what happened is extremely important. Don't just let the hospital say, "Fight with police." Make them write down your side of the story. That's an independent event which carries much more weight in court. Finally, excess force is one of those type of behaviors that people don't like, that is, juries don't like. So if you have an excess force claim, come to a law firm that specializes in that specializes in constitutional law, police misconduct, and excess force, because we can help you. Thank you.